It started with a promise. A simple, innocent promise made one late evening at our kitchen table. Claire had always dreamed of owning her own cafe, a cozy little place where she could bake pastries, brew the perfect cup of coffee, and welcome people with that warm smile of hers. She'd talk about it for years, her little sanctuary, her escape from the dullness of 9-to-5 life. And I, being the husband who loved her more than anything, swore I'd make it happen. We weren't rich by any means. I had a steady job, decent pay, but nothing extravagant. To fund her dream, we had to make sacrifices, big ones. No vacations, no splurging on gadgets or clothes, not even small luxuries like dining out on weekends. Every extra dollar went into the Claire's Café Fund. For nearly 3 years, we lived frugally. I took overtime shifts, I sold my car and drove a beat-up old sedan just to save on payments. I did all of this with a smile because I believed in her dream as much as she did. The day the cafe opened was one of the proudest of my life. I'll never forget the way her eyes lit up when she saw the sign with her name on it. She hugged me so tightly and whispered, "You made this possible." In that moment, every sacrifice felt worth it. I imagined this cafe becoming the cornerstone of our future, something we could build together and pass on to our kids one day. For the first few months, everything seemed perfect. Claire was happy, radiant even. She'd come home buzzing with excitement, talking about new menu ideas, regular customers, and plans to host small events. I loved seeing her so passionate. I helped whenever I could, painting walls, fixing shelves, even washing dishes during the early weeks when she couldn't afford extra staff. I felt like we were a team. Then, I started hearing about Ethan. At first, it was casual. Ethan suggested a new coffee blend, or Ethan helped me with the new supplier contract. I assumed he was just an employee or maybe a fellow cafe owner giving her advice. But as weeks passed, his name came up more and more, always with this spark in her eyes, a tone in her voice that I couldn't quite place. When I finally asked who he was, she smiled and said, "Oh, just a friend who knows a lot about the coffee business. He's been such a help." I didn't think much of it at first. Claire was friendly by nature, and I trusted her completely. But then little things started to pile up. Late nights at the cafe when business was supposedly slow. Phone calls she'd take in the other room, whispering. Text messages she'd hide as soon as I walked in. When I asked why she was home so late, she'd say, "Inventory took longer than expected," or "Ethan stayed to help me clean up." One night, curiosity got the better of me. While she was in the shower, I checked her phone. I'd never done that before. I hated the idea of snooping, but something in my gut told me something was wrong. And there it was. Message after message between her and Ethan. Not just friendly chatter. Intimate words. Inside jokes. Flirty comments. Things like, "I can't stop thinking about last night," and "When can I see you again?" without worrying about him finding out. I felt my chest tighten as I scrolled through the conversations. My hands were shaking. My world was collapsing one text at a time. This wasn't just an emotional connection, they had slept together. She admitted it in a message. The woman I loved, the woman I sacrificed everything for, had been betraying me under the very roof of the dream I built for her. I sat there on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the shower running. 1,000 memories flashed through my mind: the years of saving, the nights I worked late so she could have this cafe, the pride I felt when she smiled at me on opening day. And now, all I could see was her laughing with him, touching him, giving him the affection that used to be mine. When she came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, she looked at me like nothing was wrong. Like my entire world hadn't just shattered into pieces. I didn't say a word. I couldn't, not yet. I just handed her the phone and walked out. That night, I slept in my car. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't bear to be under the same roof as her. I stared at the ceiling of that old sedan, the same one I'd kept to save money for her dream, and wondered how I could have been so blind. The next day, she called me nonstop. I ignored her for hours until I finally picked up. She was crying, begging me to come home, saying it wasn't what I thought. When I asked her if she loved him, she didn't answer. That silence told me everything. In the days that followed, she admitted the affair. She said it started a few months after the cafe opened. She claimed it just happened, that she felt lonely because I was working so much. The irony of that nearly killed me. I was working overtime for her, for us, and she repaid me by finding comfort in another man's arms. I moved out a week later. Filed for divorce shortly after. She tried to apologize, tried to make me understand, but there's no coming back from something like that. Love can survive a lot, but betrayal at that level, no. Not for me. I walked away with nothing but my dignity. She kept the cafe, of course. I didn't fight for it. I didn't want anything that reminded me of her lies. Last I heard, the business is struggling. Ethan disappeared not long after everything came out. I guess he wasn't in it for the long haul. As for me, I started over. It wasn't easy. I lost my wife, my savings, and years of my life to someone who didn't value me. But I learned something important: never lose yourself for someone else's dream. Support them, yes. Love them, absolutely. But never sacrifice so much that you have nothing left when they decide they want something or someone different. Do I regret helping her? No. Regret is useless. I gave with a pure heart, and that says more about me than her betrayal ever will. She destroyed our marriage, but she didn't destroy me. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this: I'll never let anyone take advantage of my love again. I left off standing in the ruins of my life, wondering how I had ended up here. After I filed for divorce, I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just 4 walls, a mattress on the floor, and a leaky faucet, but it was mine. Mine, and no one could take that away from me. The silence was crushing at first. I'd come home from work and half expect to hear Claire humming in the kitchen, baking something new for the cafe. But instead, there was just nothing. I'd lie awake most nights replaying everything in my head. The way she smiled when she talked about the cafe. The pride in her voice when she said customers loved her pastries. And then the bitter aftertaste, the messages, the lies, the betrayal that made all those memories feel like poison. There were nights I'd stare at the ceiling until dawn, wondering if I'd ever trust anyone again. The divorce process was brutal, not because we fought. She didn't contest anything, but because every signature felt like a knife in my chest. Signing away years of love. Signing away the dream I built for her. Signing away the life I thought we had. I didn't go to the cafe during that time, even when I needed to pick up some of my things. I asked a friend to grab them for me because the thought of walking into that place made me sick. Months passed. Slowly, the pain dulled. I threw myself into work, took on extra projects, saved up again, not for anyone else this time, just for me. I started going to the gym, something I'd neglected for years. I even signed up for a cooking class, partly to keep myself busy. Partly because I realized I'd spent my whole marriage eating Claire's food and never learned to make anything more complicated than scrambled eggs. Then, one evening, I ran into someone unexpected. It was Lisa, a mutual friend of ours, someone I hadn't seen since before the wedding. She spotted me at the grocery store, standing in front of the pasta aisle like a man trying to decode the meaning of life. She smiled, and for the first time in months, I smiled back without forcing it. We ended up grabbing coffee, catching up on life. It felt good, normal, even. Lisa had heard bits and pieces of what happened, but not the full story. When I told her, she just shook her head and said, "You didn't deserve that." Simple words, but they hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd been blaming myself, thinking maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe if I'd spent less time working and more time with Claire, things would have been different. Hearing someone else say it wasn't my fault felt like lifting a weight off my chest. We started meeting up more often, at first as friends, then something more. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't forced. It just happened naturally, like two broken pieces finding a way to fit together. Lisa was nothing like Claire. She didn't talk about grand dreams or expensive plans. She just wanted simple things: a walk in the park, a good movie, a glass of wine on the couch. With her, I didn't feel like I was constantly trying to prove my worth. I could just be me, and that was enough. Meanwhile, Claire's life wasn't going as smoothly. Word got around that the cafe was struggling. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she'd taken out loans to keep it afloat, but business was slow. Apparently, even the guy she threw everything away for bailed on her as soon as things got tough. No surprise there. Players like him never stick around once the fun is over. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little satisfaction hearing that. Not because I wanted her to fail, but because I wanted her to understand what she'd lost. Not the money, not the cafe, but me. The man who stood by her through everything, who believed in her dreams more than she did, who sacrificed his own happiness so she could have hers. She threw that away for a fling with some smooth-talking idiot who didn't even stick around. One night, out of the blue, Claire called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. She said she missed me, that she made a mistake, that she wanted to talk. I listened in silence, waiting for the part where she'd admit why she really called, because she was lonely, because she wanted someone to save her again. And sure enough, that's exactly what it was. "I can't do this alone," she whispered. "I need you." For a moment, I thought about all the years we shared, all the good memories before everything went to hell. A part of me still loved her, even after everything. But then I remembered those messages, those late nights she spent with him while I was breaking my back to keep her dream alive. I remembered sleeping in my car, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. So, I told her no. Calmly, firmly, without anger, just the truth. "You needed me when I gave you everything I had," I said. "And you threw me away. I'm not doing that again." There was silence on the other end, then a choked sob before she hung up. I sat there for a while, staring at my phone, and realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was free. Now, years later, I'm happier than I've ever been. Lisa and I built a life together, not a life of sacrifice and resentment, but one of balance, respect, and love. I never thought I'd trust again, but she proved me wrong. And as for Claire, I heard the cafe eventually closed. She moved back in with her parents, last I heard. Sometimes, I wonder if she ever thinks about what she lost, not the cafe, not the money, but the man who would have moved mountains for her. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. It doesn't matter anymore. Because I've finally learned that real love isn't about giving up everything for someone else. It's about building something together, with honesty and loyalty at the foundation. And I'll never let anyone tear that down again. I remember the first time I saw Claire like it was yesterday. It was at a friend's birthday party, one of those casual gatherings where you don't expect anything life-changing to happen. But then she walked in, wearing this simple blue dress that somehow made her look like the most radiant person in the room. She had that kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person who mattered. I couldn't stop staring, and when we finally talked, it was like the world faded away. We talked about everything: our favorite books, music, dreams. She told me she wanted to own a cafe someday, a place where people could feel at home, surrounded by the smell of fresh coffee and pastries. I laughed and said I wanted to travel the world, but if she opened that cafe, I'd be her first customer. She smiled, and in that moment, I think I fell in love. It felt so easy, so natural. Like I'd known her my whole life. The early days were perfect. We'd spend hours talking about the future, dreaming big. I worked hard at my job, she worked part-time while planning her big move into the cafe business. I was proud of her. She had this fire in her eyes when she talked about it, and I wanted nothing more than to help make that dream a reality. So when she said she needed money for the down payment on the cafe space, I didn't hesitate. I dipped into my savings, the savings I'd built for years for my own goals, and gave it all to her without a second thought. At first, everything seemed fine. She was busy with the renovations, the menu planning, the branding. I'd visit the cafe after work, bringing her dinner because she'd been there all day. She'd smile, kiss me on the cheek, and tell me she couldn't do this without me. Those words meant everything to me. They made every sacrifice feel worth it. But then things started to change. It was subtle at first, late nights at the cafe, claiming she was handling inventory or baking for the morning rush. She started dressing up more, putting on makeup even on days when she said she was too busy for anything else. I didn't think much of it at first. I told myself she just wanted to look professional for her customers. But then she became distant, less affectionate, always glued to her phone. One night, I walked into the cafe unannounced because I wanted to surprise her. I brought flowers, roses, her favorite. But when I stepped inside, the lights were dim, and there she was, sitting at a corner table with some guy I'd never seen before. They were leaning close, laughing, her hand resting on his arm like it belonged there. I froze. I wanted to believe it was innocent, but deep down, I knew. She saw me, her face went pale, and the look in her eyes confirmed everything. I didn't say a word. I just turned around and walked out. She called me later, crying, saying it wasn't what it looked like. But I'd seen the way she looked at him, the way I used to think she looked at me. Eventually, the truth came out. His name was Ethan, a supplier who delivered to the cafe. They'd been seeing each other for months. She swore it was just a fling, that it didn't mean anything. But how do you trust someone after that? How do you look at them the same way when every kiss feels like a lie? I left that night and never went back home. For a while, I stayed in a cheap motel, eating takeout and staring at the ceiling. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming. How I could be so blind. I gave her everything, my time, my money, my love, and it still wasn't enough. That thought nearly destroyed me. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom: you can't go any lower. The only way left is up. Slowly, I started to rebuild. I stopped checking her social media, stopped torturing myself with questions I'd never get answers to. I focused on myself, on getting stronger, not just physically but mentally. Every day, I reminded myself that her choices didn't define my worth. That was the hardest part, believing I was still enough, even after she made me feel like I wasn't. Months later, when she called me crying, asking me to come back, I realized how far I'd come. A part of me wanted to scream, to tell her how much she hurt me. But I didn't. I just said no and hung up. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Claire's betrayal taught me something I never wanted to learn: that love without respect and loyalty is nothing. I don't regret helping her chase her dream. That's who I am. I support the people I love. But I learned the hard way that if someone can't appreciate that, they don't deserve a place in my life. Lisa came later, when I least expected it. She didn't heal me. No one can do that but yourself. But she reminded me that love can be good, simple, and honest. She never made me feel like I had to earn her affection. With her, everything just feels right. And that's how I know this time, it's real. If Claire ever thinks about me, I hope she realizes what she threw away. Not the money, not the cafe, but the man who would have given her the world. But if she doesn't, that's fine too. Because I'm done looking back. My future is brighter than it's ever been, and for the first time in years, I'm truly happy. After Claire's betrayal, I couldn't sleep for nights. Every corner of our apartment reminded me of her: the coffee mugs we bought together, the little fridge magnets from trips we'd taken, the couch where we'd shared endless nights talking about nothing and everything. I felt like a ghost in my own life, haunted by memories of someone who had never truly been mine. I stayed in that cheap motel, nights blending into each other. I kept my blinds closed, afraid to face the world, afraid to see people laughing with their partners, afraid to hear love stories that felt so far removed from mine. I would stare at the ceiling, thinking about all the money I gave her for the cafe, all the energy, the late nights helping her plan, the sacrifices I made. And then I'd think about Ethan, how he had no idea what I'd done, yet he was the one laughing next to her, the one she had chosen over me. I started journaling, writing every thought, every shred of anger, sadness, and confusion. It became my therapy. I wrote about our first date, how I thought I'd found the person I'd been waiting for my whole life. I wrote about the day I gave her the money for the cafe, the dreams I had pinned to it, the late nights we'd stayed up imagining the menu, the interior, the first customers. I wrote about the day I walked in and saw them together, the moment my heart stopped and then shattered. One night, exhausted and raw, I went for a long walk around the city. It was quiet, almost eerily so. The streets were dim, and the cool air hit my face like a wake-up call. I realized that for months, I had let someone else control my happiness. I had let her choices dictate my emotions, my sleep, my everyday. And now it was time to take it back. I didn't contact Claire. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't plead. I focused on rebuilding myself. I started running again, pushing my body to exhaustion, letting the physical pain drown out the mental ache. I began reading books on personal growth, learning to set boundaries, learning to recognize my own worth independent of anyone else. It was during one of those runs that I met Lisa. She was jogging the opposite direction, headphones in, a carefree smile on her face. She waved at me when our paths crossed, and something about her energy was refreshing. We started talking, slowly at first, about music, books, the simple things in life. She never pressured me to talk about Claire, never made me feel like I was broken. She just existed in a way that made life feel light again. Weeks turned into months. I spent more time with Lisa, exploring the city, trying new cafes, laughing without thinking about betrayal, without fearing heartbreak. With her, the world felt brighter, safer. I realized that love could be simple. That not every relationship required drama, obsession, or betrayal. That happiness could be quiet and steady. Then came the day I finally went back to the cafe Claire had opened. I hadn't been inside since the night I walked out. I wanted to see it, to close the chapter fully. The place was bustling, filled with people enjoying pastries and coffee. Claire was behind the counter, professional, smiling at customers. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was softer now, more distant. I realized I had no right to feel entitled to her life, her choices. I had given, and she had taken, and that was that. I left a note on the counter, small and simple: "I hope you find happiness." I have, and I walked out. Lisa was waiting for me outside. We shared a quiet moment, just holding hands and watching the sun dip behind the skyline. I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I wasn't haunted by the past. I wasn't consumed by betrayal. I wasn't waiting for someone else to make me whole. I realized then that love wasn't about giving everything to someone who might destroy you. It was about finding someone who valued you, who respected you, and who chose you every day. Claire had taught me the hard way, but Lisa was teaching me gently how beautiful life could be when shared with the right person. The scars of betrayal didn't vanish, but they became part of my story, reminders of strength, of endurance, of the fact that I survived when I thought I couldn't. And with each day, with each laugh shared with Lisa, I felt more alive than I ever had when I was with Claire. I often think about the money I spent, the time I gave, and the love I offered. I don't regret any of it. It shaped me, it tested me, and it led me here to someone who sees me, truly sees me, and loves me for all that I am. Claire's betrayal was a dark chapter, but it led me to my brightest days. And for the first time in a long time, I could say without hesitation I am happy. Truly happy.